What actually transpires when one of Hollywood's most well-respected names declines to indulge the antics of a late-night host who feeds on drama? The world learned the hard way when Brad Pitt was unexpectedly pulled from the Jimmy Kimmel Live show. After what appeared to be a run-of-the-mill interview devolved into shock and tension nobody expected. This was not your run-of-the-mill celebrity appearance. What started out as a routine promotional stop became one of the most intense moments in the history of talk shows. Keep on watching, because the reality of this moment will have you wondering everything you thought you knew about late-night TV. As the evening began, energy in the studio was alive. Fans packed the crowd waiting for a glimpse of Brad Pitt in the flesh, with no idea the night would conclude in gasps rather than applause. Brad arrived relaxed and smiling outside, pausing for selfies, flashing his recognizable smile, prepared to sell his new work with the same charm that made him a household favorite. But off camera, there was stress brewing. Production crew members were complaining all day about Kimmel's bad temper. One crew member reported that he had been yelling at staff and was being more demanding than normal. Something was wrong, they said, but nobody could have foreseen just how poorly it would go. And then came the surprise that made everything turn around. When Brad stepped onto the stage, the audience went wild with applause. Everyone was used to expecting giggles, anecdotes, and pure Pitt charm, but as soon as they sat down, things took a different turn. Kimmel began by asking the standard questions regarding the film and the director, and Brad replied slickly, even inserting some light humor and friendly yarns. Then was the time that left everyone in awe. Kimmel leaned forward, smiled with an intensity that was just a notch too sharp, and uttered something no one saw coming. "So Brad, we all know your dirty divorce drama. Why not give us some tasty drama that will be adored by the audience?" And just like that, the mood in the room shifted, the smile disappeared from Brad's face, and you could feel the unease spreading through the crowd. What came next would not only capture headlines, but ignite a firestorm online that is still burning. Stay tuned, because what Brad did next turned the script on its head and revealed a side of Hollywood few are brave enough to speak about. The camera picked up on a shift in Brad's expression. His face remained placid on the surface, but the tension was palpable. He was visibly uncomfortable with where the discussion was going. He replied with measured restraint, saying, "Jimmy, we both know that's not why I'm here today. I'd rather we kept on topic regarding the film." But Jimmy didn't let it go. He leaned in, pushing harder with a smirk. "Come on, Brad, you know everyone wants to hear about it. You could seriously expect to sit on my stage and only cover what you want to cover." The crowd chuckled at first, but the laughter quickly faded, replaced by an uneasy silence as the mood began to shift. Brad shifted in his chair, still measured actually. "Jimmy, that's precisely how these interviews always go. We agree beforehand on what will and won't be talked about, and my life outside work was well marked off limits." What the audience couldn't see was the friendly tug of war going on behind the scenes. Brad's team had drawn firm boundaries, and the show had promised to respect them. But now those boundaries were being infringed. A member of his publicity team would subsequently confirm that in-depth discussions were conducted with the producers. The request was straightforward: keep the talk away from family issues and anything related to his legal issues. But rather than backing off, Jimmy escalated. He leaned over into a more mocking tone, saying, "That's not the way things are done on my show. Brad, my people demand real talk, not some groomed media speech." The atmosphere on set was now tense. The audience was silent, the previously light mood replaced by something somber. Brad attempted to keep his cool, breathing deeply and standing his ground. "Look, Jimmy, I've had a lot of respect for you over the years, but this is starting to feel like an ambush. There is a lot to talk about, from the project to my career and to the health of the industry, but my personal life is not up for discussion, and you agreed to that." Something changed in Jimmy's face. A flash of anger appeared. Those closest to him knew what was going to happen. The side of him fewer people had witnessed in public was going to come out. His voice became pointed, his face icy. "Don't tell me how to produce my show. Brad," he said, "this isn't your press junket. This is real TV. My rules are used here, not yours." The whole studio lay still. The gravity of his words rang out in the quiet. Brad remained motionless, shocked but not shattered. He maintained a steady voice. "I'm not looking for control, Jimmy. I'm just..." looking for the simple respect of keeping what we agreed on. Before I left here during the following break, those sitting in the audience saw Brad's team engage in a heated confrontation with the producers. Brad remained seated, thumbing through his phone, eyes cast downward, while Jimmy paced near the edge of the stage, talking heatedly with his writers. Neither man glanced at the other, and all who were viewing understood that something had cracked in that instant. When the cameras started rolling again, the air in the room felt more oppressive than before, rather than softening it out. Kimmel came back with a cutting apology that felt more like a slap than a gesture of reconciliation. He apologized. "If I hit a nerve there, Brad. I guess some subjects are just too sensitive for you." That was the last straw. Brad was fed up, and what he said came as a surprise to everyone. He turned to Jimmy with calm authority and informed him, "You know what, Jimmy? I have worked long enough in this business to recognize when a person is causing drama for attention and ratings, something that might work in your show, but I am not here to play that game." The audience was paralyzed with shock. Brad Pitt, famous for his laid-back and suave persona, had just publicly embarrassed a big-time TV host on live television. But to those who actually knew him, this day had been a long time coming. Brad is kind and patient, a longtime friend of his added, but he is not one to be pushed around. He believes in principle, and he will not allow anyone to use him, not even one as large as Jimmy Kimmel. That is when things went bad. Kimmel could be seen visibly tensing, his jaw clenched and his face reddening. He white-knuckled the edge of his desk and asked in a low, tense tone, "Are you saying I attempted to ambush you for ratings?" Brad remained calm. He gazed Kimmel directly in the eye and uttered, "I am not indicating it. I am telling you the truth. And on the basis of your reaction, I believe you are aware that it holds true." And like that, the deception broke the instant that ensued, created waves of shock throughout the studio, and subsequently would illuminate every nook and cranny of the internet. The affable television host persona fell away, exposing an anger a few had ever witnessed. Kimmel lashed out at his crew, cut to commercial. However, the holdup was just long enough. The cameras did not stop rolling as he bent towards Brad, stabbing a finger towards him, and hissed, "You think you can speak to me like that on my own show? Do you know who I am?" Brad blinked. Not. He kept his eye and replied levelly, "I know who you are, Jimmy. The question is, do you? Because what you're doing now is not how an actual professional behaves towards their guests." Silence descended over the room, the kind of silence that was electric. Some in the audience pulled out their phones thinking this was history being made, and they were right. Those clips would rapidly blow up on social media. Then Kimmel snapped, "You're done here. Get off my stage." His anger contorted his face, and for an instant Brad looked dazed. Then he registered a thin, incredulous smile, as if attempting to grasp the implausibility of it all. "Are you seriously kicking me out because I would not let you cross the line we agreed on?" Brad said, remaining calm. Kimmel went to the side security. He yelled, his voice loud, "Now get Mr. Pitt off this set." The audience responded in an instant. Gasps, shouts, and murmurs filled the studio. A few jumped to their feet. Others started shouting back at the host. What had begun as tension had now turned to madness through it all. Brad remained calm, his hands raised slightly as security moved up. "No need for that," he said quietly. "I can make my own way out." He faced the audience with a gentle smile, one that was in contrast to the anger etched on Jimmy's face. "Sorry you had to see this," he said softly. "This is probably not the evening anybody had in mind." As he prepared to go, one voice pierced the commotion, calling out, "We're with you, Brad," and that one moment set off a tide of support. Applause rang out through the room. Raucous and unrelenting security stalled, unsure whether they should carry out their commands. Brad strode away with quiet pride, nodding to the guards as he walked past them. The clapping became louder now, more than mere support. It was a protest against what had just occurred with Brad away. Jimmy tried to change the atmosphere, making a half-hearted laugh. "Well, that wasn't expected," but then he said, trying to make light of the situation, "Some guys just can't take a joke, right?" But the ensuing silence was stronger than any words. The audience wasn't fooled, and the atmosphere in the room had completely changed. A number of audience members quietly exited, some shaking their heads, others still whispering in disbelief. Backstage, Brad's team had long since reacted. Phones out, damage control underway. Brad, however, was not phased, calm. Even I'm sorry it came to this, he reportedly said to his publicist. But there are limits, and he crossed them intentionally. I want to let myself be disrespected for someone else's ratings, while Jimmy's production crew was frantically attempting to keep together a show that had obviously disintegrated, though another guest was lined up to be on the change in the mood, was unmistakable. The audience was chilly and the thrill was gone. One member of the audience would later comment, "It was like he changed right in front of us one minute. He's the Jimmy we laugh with the next. He's someone completely different, angry. I mean, I can look at him the same way anymore." Desperate to salvage something the producers gave away, free merchandise pumped up the next guest and attempted to revive the energy. But nothing hit. The jokes fell flat, the crowd hardly reacted, and the tension hung in the air like a shadow over each word as Brad left the building. Fans and journalists outside noticed the premature exit. They yelled to him, curious, apprehensive. True to his form, Brad paused momentarily and with a composed demeanor said sometimes things don't go the way we expect them to. Then he proceeded, leaving behind a scene that would long be discussed after the cameras were gone. That was all Brad would mention at the time, but the tale was far from being told by the time he made it to his car, when the internet had already lit up with footage from the altercation. Fans and supporters in attendance wasted no time posting what they had just seen, and they ensured footage would not be cut out or buried. This was no longer a moment, it had become a movement in hours. The hashtag #ShamelKicked was trending on all major platforms. Celebrities, fans, and media voices stood behind Brad and criticized Kimmel for what he did. The headlines rolled in quick and hard. The major entertainment sources ran wall-to-wall coverage of the event. But what actually shocked the world were the voices that arose. Former guests of the show began to share their own creepy experiences. One actress who requested not to be named explained, "This is not an isolated incident. Jimmy gets mean when things do not go his way." The difference: Brad had the courage and status to stand up against him. Most of us kept quiet because we felt helpless. Even one of the former writers on Kimmel's own staff spoke out, validating what many had already come to suspect. There is a reason why people do not linger long on that program. What you witnessed on television with Brad is the actual Jimmy. The nice guy persona is reserved for the viewers. As news of the episode was spreading quicker than anyone anticipated, network executives rushed to do damage control. They released a well-rehearsed statement stating that we respect all our visitors and try to provide fun conversations. We apologize that this episode failed to live up to that mandate. They picked their words carefully, blaming no one at all, but it was evident that they were attempting to calm a fire which was already out of control. While Brad and his staff opted for silence, they issued no follow-up, no response, and that silence only served to magnify his dignity. His fans appreciated the way he conducted himself, opting for dignity over drama, and the public reaction overwhelmingly came down in his favor. Experts then started opining with grave forecasts regarding the consequences. This type of on-air meltdown could irreparably harm a host's career. One veteran entertainment writer noted, in today's media landscape, where authenticity is the key, people will no longer tolerate poor conduct. Behind closed doors, sources indicated that Kimmel was livid, angry that the story had escaped his control. Insiders reported that he screamed at his staff, insisting they repair the story, twisted to salvage his reputation. But the raw footage was ubiquitous, and there was no going back. By the following morning, the furor had escalated way beyond a celebrity fight. This was now a discussion about Hollywood itself, about power, about respect, in the way talk shows may never be the same again. Some media specialists even referred to it as a breaking point, stating that this moment could bring real change to the way guests are treated and how much say hosts actually have when the broadcast actually aired. It was obvious that something had been cut. The confrontation had been chopped up, re-edited into a version that seemed strangely sanitized. The program made Brad seem to have slipped away quietly during a commercial, and Kimmel made only a cryptic statement regarding an unexpected scheduling conflict. But the internet had already witnessed the uncut truth footage had gone viral days ago. and the viewers were quick to expose the false impression. One social media entry encapsulated the mood they're attempting to rewrite what we all saw happen. It read, and that message alone spread like wildfire. Outrage erupted on the network's social sites. People inundated the comments section with outrage and dismay. Many swore they would never watch again. The backlash reached the point that several advertisers were reportedly dropping their sponsorships, refusing to be associated with the scandal. As executives scrambled behind closed doors 3 days after that, Brad had his first public sighting at a charity event. Long in the planning, reporters descended upon him, all clamoring for comment on the interview. Brad was as composed as ever, offering a measured and thoughtful response. Look, everyone has bad days, he said with quiet dignity. But if you are inviting someone into your place, whether that's your sitting room or your program, there should be respect when boundaries are established. They need to be respected, that's all. I stood up for her when she asked if Kimmel had contacted Brad's. Response was brief and revealing no. He replied with a gentle nod. But that's all right. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words ever could. While Brad navigated the glare of attention with aplomb, Kimmel vanished from his own show for the remainder of the week. The network insisted he was on vacation, but insiders were quicker to spill the beans. Executives had instructed him to take a back seat. They were livid and racing to contain the damage. A production source claimed meetings, where nonstop people at the top are seriously concerned. This could be the end for the show. In spite of the enforced hiatus, those around Kimmel told him his demeanor hadn't altered. He was still adamant that he had done nothing wrong and that the public would come to his defense. But that intractable mentality only made executives even more apprehensive. When he finally came back the next week, he started out with a scripted apology that sounded more like damage control than apology. I want to apologize for what happened with Brad Pitt, he started speaking in a low tone. Things got out of control and I overreacted for that. I apologize to Brad and to all of you watching, but whatever authenticity the moment may have possessed was lost in an instant as he went on to make light of the episode and suggest that Brad had reacted wildly. Many viewers weren't fooled. The apology rang false and contrived, and for many only served to reinforce what they already knew. The true Kimmel had been revealed, and nothing that editing or humor could be done to reverse what the world had witnessed. The outrage struck hard and quick. Social media again blew up this time, with outrage over Kimmel's shallow apology. Critics and supporters alike viewed it as another try at avoiding accountability rather than taking responsibility for his actions. It was like damage control rather than regret. While Brad remained quiet, refusing to make comment on the alleged apology, his resolute refusal to play along with the drama only raised his public profile higher across media platforms. He was complimented on his restraint, professionalism, and integrity in the face of persistent goading. But the effect on Kimmel was much worse as the days went by. The damage became evident. His show started losing viewers at an unbelievable rate. Those who had previously tuned in religiously began turning away, and they delivered on their threats to boycott. Then the discreet cancellations. Some A-list attendees withdrew from their future appearances off stage. Celebrities made it evident they did not want any part in the scandal or risk being embarrassed like Brad had been. And within the studio, matters went from bad to worse, fueled by the public humiliation. Staff began to come forward and talk about what had been happening for so long. They painted a picture of a poisonous atmosphere filled with stress, disrespect, and fear. HR grievances were mounting quickly, and the network was compelled to do something. One crew member summed it up: "It is like the dam has finally burst." For the longest time, we thought this was just what you get for working on a big show, but now people are waking up to the fact that they should not have to endure that sort of treatment. The network officials, concerned about both their image and the possible legal repercussions, started looking into their alternatives discreetly behind closed doors. They began musing over alternatives. They kept it all hush-hush. But the message was clear. Something had to change. For Brad, the experience had the reverse effect. His public support went through the roof. Fans and industry voices alike applauded him for holding out against what most perceived as bullying. Other talk shows took notice, and more than a few issued invitations hoping to provide him the forum he deserved. At last, Brad agreed to a place on a rival network. This time the tone was quite different. He was welcomed warmly. Space was given to him to express himself and permitted to concentrate on his work rather than his lifestyle. The interview was universally acclaimed, praised as a return to intelligent, considerate discourse. It reminded everyone what late-night television could be and illustrated just how poisonous things had become under the stewardship of Kimmel. The incident soon sparked a larger debate throughout the entertainment community. Many were wondering about the dynamics of power inherent in celebrity interviews and the disturbing trend of using shock value instead of real conversation. All of a sudden, it wasn't about one interview anymore. It became a mirror held to the entire talk show format. In response, a number of large hosts made official announcements regarding changes to their strategy, promising to engage guests more actively in determining the subjects and honoring established boundaries in the background. Producers began questioning practices long accepted as normal, but now branded exploitative. What made this moment really seismic, insiders added, was that it concerned someone like Brad Pitt. When a person of his stature speaks out, enough people stop and pay attention. Said one industry veteran, he can step away from that interview without jeopardizing his career. Most actors can do that. That is why so many have been enabling this sort of thing for years. As the years went by, the fallout became a cautionary tale, told in hushed tones down studio corridors and agency cubicles. Kimmel's reputation suffered damage that many think will never be repaired completely. Brad, however, became a subtle icon of integrity, refusing to hold his head back for respect in a place where so often it is disrespected. The long-term professional fallout for Kimmel is still in the making. Networks and advertisers are waiting with bated breath to find out what happens next, but one thing is certain already. Those awkward moments on stage have left a lasting imprint on the business. They changed the subject and reminded everyone that nobody, even a popular host, is above being held accountable. So what have you got to say? Was Brad right to draw a line, stand his ground, or should he have rolled over with the annoying questions? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this in-depth look at one of the most heated moments in talk show history, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories beyond the headlines. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.